Well, I think he's right, and I will tell you as chair of the ninth, one of my big battles on a regular basis is getting enough materials for a community that is larger than the state of New Jersey, and begging for signs and handouts and all those types of things for our chairs. I don't know if you're aware of this, but the amount that the Democratic Party spends nationally on rural areas is 3% of their budget. So for those of us who continue to fight the battle, part of what we've tried to do this year is training for our House of Delegate candidates. Went over really well. We've tried to support the people running even locally in as many ways as we can. And I think Jay Jones was right. All of us, go home, talk to your friends, talk to your neighbors, talk to your families. There has never been a more critical year to stand up and fight back. Okay? This gentleman, John Peace, is a friend. He's also a committee member on CD9 and actually joined in to help us learn to remarket how we approach rural Democrats. His company called Your Topics, and for the record, he's been published in some national media accounts, and as well is already doing training on Zoom with rural candidates in other states. Welcome, John Peace.
It's probably been about 20 years since I've spoken in front of a crowd like this, so y'all have to bear with me a little bit. Doug's a little bit more experienced and better at it than I am. But my name's John Peace, and Joy, I have you beat by one generation. I'm a 5th generation farmer. I go back 5. And when your family goes back to the 1800s in Big Stone Gap, Josh, you fellow, we don't do speeches. We do storytelling. And Josh, you know that. Yeah. Mountain people, famous for storytelling. And like I said, I want to tell y'all a little personal story, and I promise this circles around why we're here as Democrats. For Doug knows me, some other people know me, I was raised by my granddad. I was Papa's boy. My granddad was born in 1922. He only spent 4 years away from Big Stone Gap, a little community called Crackers Neck. 1 year was in basic training in World War II, flight school, and the other 3 years was flying B-17 bombers, getting shot at by Nazis and dropping bombs on Nazis. And you couldn't drag him away from Crackers Neck. He never left again, okay? But my story's not about him. I could tell stories about him, and I've written books about him. But my story's about the matriarch of my family. His mother, my great-grandmother, was the woman that kind of raised me on the farm. And she was born in 1897, okay? Her granddad and her great-uncle fought in the Civil War. So I grew up in a household hearing stories, first-hand stories, that she knew people that fought in the Civil War that went back that far. And she lived to 1995. So she lived from 1897, and she was born, think about 1897. She was, some of these people are way too young to remember, but she was born into an era of Little House on the Prairie. Horse and buggy, no power, outhouses, no indoor plumbing. That's what she grew up in. And I want y'all to think about in her lifetime from 1897 to 1995 when she passed. She lived to be 98 years old. What all she saw in her life. And I printed off, and I won't read all this because I won't make it, but 1901 was the first transatlantic wire signal. 1903, the Wright brothers' first airplane. 1908, the Ford Model T. 1915, first coast-to-coast telephone call. 1928, this is pretty important, when penicillin was discovered. We kind of liked antibiotics. 1939, saw the first television. 1942, first nuclear reaction. Of course, we know in World War II, first nuclear bomb. 1947, the transistor was created. 1957, the space race. She lived from horse and buggy to watching the space race. 1959, Xerox was created. Getting into the 60s, 1964, basic language for computers was developed. 1969, the forerunner of email was created. And she grew up with horse and buggy. 1969, we landed on the moon. In the 70s, Apple computer was founded in 1976. 1979, the Sony Walkman. 1985, Windows was created. 1989, the World Wide Web was created. One more I really want to get, we probably know this one. 1994, Amazon was founded. So she went from horse and buggy to seeing Amazon. And she didn't have a personal computer in her house, but she saw mine. She'd come by my house. I had old Tandy, you know, remember Radio Shack, Tandy computers? And now, here's where I'm going to circle this around. 1993, if you walked in her house, she was going to feed you. It didn't matter if you came from Golden Corral, you just ate all you could eat. If you walked in her house, she was going to feed you again. So 1993, I'm sitting at her kitchen table. She fixed me some food. She had a newspaper, she read her newspaper every day. On the headlines, 1993, President Clinton signs Medical Leave Act. You all remember this? Used to, you could get fired if you just had a baby. But the Family and Medical Leave Act, 1993. And I can remember it like yesterday. She took her reading glasses off, laid them on the table, laid her paper down, put her hand on my arm. Now she called me JW, my middle name's William, so she called me JW. She said, JW, I want you to remember one thing the rest of your life. She said, the only time that something good's happened for the working man, the working woman, or the working person has been because of the Democratic Party and unions.
Yeah!
Now, I'm a proud member of the National Writers Union. Now, we're not rough and tumble like the UMWA or the Teamsters. We write things. So that's why I'm up here talking about the Democratic Party and unions. But let's talk about our history with the Democratic Party and unions. 1913, this is all my granddad, this is why my little granny, she was about 4 foot something. We called her Little Granny. Little Granny said, you know, think about it, the only good thing that's ever happened to the working person because of the Democratic Party and union. 1913, the Department of Labor was created. 1914, Clayton Antitrust, which stated by federal law, the labor of a human being is not a commodity. The Adamson Act of 1916 set the first federal 8-hour workday. We kind of like 8-hour workdays, don't we? The Railroad Labor Act of 1926 protected organized labor. 1935, National Labor Relations Act protected collective bargaining to allow unions to exist. Now this one's dear to all of us. Y'all know what happened in 1935? Because of the Democratic Party and labor unions, Social Security Act was passed in 1935. I kind of like that. In 1938, the Fair Labor Act. Federal minimum wage was established. Overtime was established. Child labor laws. Doug and I grew up in an area that we had a history of working 8 and 10-year-old boys in the mines. And the Democratic Party and labor unions outlawed that. Outlawed it. Let's skip up to more 1963, Equal Pay Act. We kind of like that, don't we? 1964, Civil Rights Act. We kind of like that. 1967, Age Discrimination Employment Act protected older workers from getting fired just because they got older. 1970, Occupational Safety and Health Act, OSHA. We kind of like having safe work environments. And then we get to 1993 with my grandmother, my great-grandmother, little granny, talking about the Family and Medical Leave Act. Up to 12 weeks unpaid job protecting leave with health benefits, COBRA. We take it for granted. Sometimes we don't like the prices of COBRA, but at least it's there. It exists because of the Democratic Party and labor unions. So I'm gonna wrap this up. We appreciate your time. And Doug and I were talking about messaging. Sometimes we just gotta remember our history, our proud history. And we kind of wear our work boots build America. That's something we kind of came up with because our slogan is work boots build America, not billionaires, not CEOs, not Wall Streets. The working person built. And whether you wore work boots in the coal mines, on the farm, in construction, or you wear work shoes as a teacher, doctor, nurse, accountant. You're workers. And the Democratic Party stands for workers' rights, personal rights, your rights, and my rights. So thank you very much. Appreciate your time. Thank you.